This is where kindness lives. Nextdoor's global podcast, your one-stop shop for all things kind. Here's your host, Jenny Sager.
Our guest today will bowl you over with kindness and wonder. How does an international cricketer release a song with a Bollywood megastar and go on to play a lead role in his own movie? Well, you know, that's the thing about former international cricketer Brett Lee. There's a lot more to him than bowling thunderbolts to opponents. You played international cricket for Australia and were considered one of the best fast bowlers of the generation that you were in, and this is why. 310 test wickets, 380 one-day wickets, and you did bowl stupidly fast. Now, I'm obviously American, so of course I had to do a little baseball comparison. So fast pitch in baseball is like 95 miles per hour. That would be like, okay, you're a pretty fast pitcher. You were pretty much above that all the time and really were kind of terrorizing people out there. And I've got to point out, this podcast is actually about kindness. So I'm like, what are you doing here? You weren't that kind out there, were you?
Well, thank you so much. Great to be on your podcast. But I almost look at myself as an actor. When I'm on the field, I'm a different person, that aggressive fast bowler. Off the field, I try to be the guy that I was just growing up from Mount Warrigal. So I try to separate the two.
Well, you don't seem scary here today, so that's good. So we do start this podcast by asking, what does kindness mean to you? So maybe go with the person not on the cricket field.
Well, yeah, and it can happen on the cricket field too. But I think it's the way that you're brought up. You know, I'm very close to my parents. I speak to mum and dad every single day, wherever I am in the world. We've been brought up to respect people and to be kind. And the thing that I always say to my children, and they've got great manners, and I think manners are so important. Manners are free. But every time I drop off my little fella to preschool or daycare, I say, have a great day, be kind. And that's always my parting word, because I don't care what you are in life as long as you're a good person. I think it's probably harder being a bad person, I think. So just be kind, and, you know, kindness will come back.
It does. It takes more effort to be unkind, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah, definitely. Is there someone in your life that stands out as someone that was really kind to you, whether recently or when you were growing up?
I've got a couple of mentors in my life, and you know, they're both in their 80s, but I guess it's just that love and commitment from our parents, I think. So yeah, definitely mum and dad will be the sort of the two people that spring to mind straight away about how kind they are. But also too, you know, you think about going through school, and you know, I was born on the south coast, 2 hours out of Sydney, had some wonderful teachers. Probably didn't really appreciate the teachers when you're coming through school, because you know, there's a lot of things going on in your personal life, going through puberty, and you're trying to find yourself in the world. But yeah, a lot of kind teachers, and teachers I've actually caught up with post my cricket career, and I just said to them, thank you so much for what they did, and I guess instilling that part of my life, which made me the person that I am today.
Yeah, it's kind of teachers and parents you don't appreciate until you have your own kids, right? And then you go, oh, God, that was actually really, really
They're
good.
actually pretty nice, yeah.
And when you were growing up down there in the South Coast, did you always have the dream as a kid of playing cricket?
You know, Jen, it's weird, because I knew when I was 9. Really? And when I say that, it might come across like cocky or arrogant. It's definitely not that. It's probably that inner confidence and that belief, but also the hunger. So coming from one of 3 boys, my older brother Shane first played for Australia before me. So to think that 2 boys in the family have achieved that dream to play for their country, because you got to realise too that to represent Australia in most sports, you got more chance to win the lottery.
Yeah.
So to do it twice in the family is pretty amazing. Crazy. But I just wanted it from the age of 9. So both brothers were better cricketers than me, put together. But I was the hungriest. I was the one that would never ever give up. And that was instilled from my father. He was always never played cricket in his life, never was the sporty person, but always had that mindset to just keep going, don't give up, don't let the opposition get you down, except when you have had a loss, because that's important too, you know, and don't throw the towel in, and don't think the whole world's against you, but appreciate when those good times happen too.
And do you think that's something you're born with? Because I talk to my 3 boys about that all the time with sports and schoolwork. Like, you've got to have that hunger and that determination and the resilience, as you mentioned, to push through. Do you think that you're naturally born with that, or can you learn kind of how to be that way?
Oh, look, I think a bit of both. I think you're obviously born with natural talent through whatever field it is. But it's how you're instructed from your parents, I think, and the people around you. Like, I was always told that to hang around people that have got the same interests and the same beliefs. So, you don't want to hang around that naughty boy at school that's going to make you do the wrong things. And that's what I try and, I guess, teach my oldest son, who's 16, Preston, just to be around. He's in a real good group of friends. So it's how you fulfill that inner belief of what you want to achieve in life, I guess. But yeah, it was from the age of 9. And whatever I did from that age of 9 was destined to that next little stepping stone to try and achieve that end dream. And that was play for Australia.
And were you a fast bowler at the age of 9 already?
Yeah, because I sucked at batting and I couldn't bowl spin. So I used to run in, just try and bowl at the stumps, and you see a few stumps fly and you play against kids older than you and you see the whites in their eyes and they're scared and you're thinking, this is a bit of fun actually. And then it becomes an obsession. And I was pretty obsessive with, trying to be the best of my ability, and, worked really hard on my fitness and just love what I did.
I did actually read somewhere that you were having trouble with your technique at one stage, and you called on another legendary fast bowler, Dennis Lillee, to help you out. Tell me about that and how that came about.
So I got invited at the age of 16 to come up to Hurstville.
Yeah.
So Mum and Dad drove me up 2 hours away, and so I was invited to go and attend a fast bowling camp from all around Australia. They picked, 20-odd fast bowlers, young, fast and up-and-coming bowlers. So here I am in front of my idol, growing up, the big DK Lillee, who played for Australia, 355 test wickets. I know his stats off by heart. Got the chance to meet the great man, and I was just like, far out, how good's this bloke? And trying to run in and bowl rockets, try and bowl as quick as I could. And he pulled me aside at the end and said, mate, you're the quickest here, but if you don't change your action, within 2 years, I reckon you'll break your back.
Wow.
I was like, okay, thanks. So it's all hard as a 16-year-old, take all that that information in, and I was getting wickets on the South Coast. I thought, I'm not going to change my action now, and maybe stubborn, maybe a little bit green. So at the age of 18, I was playing for Mossman, dived for a ball, and snapped my lower back. Oh. And because I had that incorrect action, and if you want to use technical terms, they call it hyperextension, counter rotation, or twisting and turning in layman's terms. And imagine getting a school ruler, excuse me, and you bend the school ruler. You see a little white line come through. That's the start of what they call a pars fracture, or like a hairline fracture, and then it snaps through. And that's what mine did. So I called him up when I broke my back and got the number off the ACB, or Cricket Australia back then, and said, Dennis, it's Brett Lee. You were right, I was wrong, now I'm ready to listen.
Oh, God.
And that formed our friendship and continues today.
Well, and he said often it's the smallest things that can make the biggest difference, right? And I think that's true when you think about kindness as well, that small acts of kindness actually make a really big impact. And can you talk a little bit about that in your life, where small things have actually driven a really big impact?
Well, just the fact that he reached out, and like with Cricket Australia, they had him on the books for a while, but then they couldn't sort of come to terms with, I guess, him trying to get the payment that he needed, because he's an absolute legend of the game. And he was doing this just to help out. And that's the thing. So he saw a young fast bowler with the same ambitions and dreams as what he had as a kid, and passed on his knowledge, which is the reason why now I pass on my knowledge to these young 16-year-olds coming through. But just the kindness out of his own heart, he found a way to allow me to chase that dream. And I remember on his 55th birthday, he's a bit of a wine connoisseur, so I picked the best wine that I could find. And I just said to him, mate, thank you so much for everything you've done for me over the years. And this is a little token of gesture of my love and support of what you have done, and appreciation. And we had a nice glass of red together. But yeah, like he definitely changed my trajectory into that Australian cricket team.
Well, your kids are pretty lucky. They've got you around to help them. Is there a fast bowler in the family yet?
Well, my oldest son, Preston, he's a batting all-rounder, which is quite ironic. So generally you'll find if you've specialised in one particular field, and mine's fast bowling or area of cricket, generally the offspring will be the opposite. So we've got the great Sachin Tendulkar, who arguably the best batsman in the world. He's done some work with my son Preston with batting, and his son's a bowler, and I've done some work with his son. So it's quite ironic.
Where Kindness Lives will be back in a moment.
Hey, you know what's really great for earning some extra cash? Nextdoor's for sale and free. Basically, it's where you go on and you can sell things that you have lying around the house. You can even swap them with neighbors, like household appliances, gardening items, pet supplies, furniture. You can really put anything on there. It's really simple. Just look around your house, see what you're not using anymore, and I bet somebody is going to want it in the neighborhood. And guess what? It also keeps waste out of the landfill and helps the environment, which is really, really awesome. And it's so easy to use. Just download the free Nextdoor app or go to nextdoor.com and start turning that trash into treasure right now. I do want to talk to you about India. We were actually talking before we started recording about how much time you spend in India. What have you noticed about community and kindness in India that's different to Australia or other places in the world? Because I do feel like it's and I've spent a lot of time there as well, like there is this unique sense of that importance of community and family and kindness just through the culture there.
Yeah, I went to India the first time 1994. I think I was 17 on a under-19s cricket tour. And I remember calling Mum and Dad, and I just said, "This place is incredible." And they're like, "What's India like?" I said, "It's hot, it's crowded, it's noisy. It hits every single sense that you've got in your body, but just these people are so beautiful. Just the warmth, the kindness, the hospitality. I still think they've got the best hospitality in the world. They will do whatever they can to please you. And if they can't please you, and you've been there, you know they'll do whatever they can to try to get to that end point. But yeah, India's changed a lot, probably too, in the last 20 years. It's become a lot more westernized, but I still love the fact that they've held on to, you know, their cultural influences too. You know, the girls still wearing the saris, the guys wearing their kurtas and stuff, and yeah, it's just a phenomenal place. But the kindness, that's what jumps out straight away.
Are there things that you've learned about yourself or incorporated into your life from traveling and spending so much time there?
Oh, look, I think it definitely makes you a better person. When people see the best in you, you often see the best in yourself as well, and that's sometimes hard. So, for me, being a professional athlete for 20-odd years, I always try to explain, if you're lucky enough to play for your country, it's like a merry-go-round. You can't get on, and you're trying so hard, like all these other boys and girls in Australia, trying to get on this merry-go-round, and you finally get on somehow, and you've got to hang on. And you might hang on for one game, you might hang on for 3 years, and I think for my case, it was like 13 years for Australia. And then you get spat off, you get thrown off this, like, and it's almost like the cartoons when you shake your head, it's like, wow, what's now? So for me, it was like getting into that sort of that state of mind where I knew that I had other things to fall back into. But like with India, the fact that it taught me about how to be a better person, and when you're on that merry-go-round, to keep giving back to people, because, when you're on tour, it can be a selfish game. You spend a lot of time in your room by yourself, you're out in the field, you try and do well for yourself, which will then help the team. But I was always, there's got to be more to life than just playing sport. So I've got other things I love doing, and cricket wasn't always my first pick, but I was very passionate about it. But it was always music first.
How do you, and we're going to talk about that music in a second, but how do you get past that kind of loneliness and just looking after yourself when you're on tour and when you're traveling all the time? We've talked to some musicians, for example, about this, and it does, like you said, it does get really lonely out there. So how do you still, again, you're still traveling a lot. Like, how do you be kind to yourself and kind of work through that?
Look, I think it was the age of 21 where there was a little part of the jigsaw puzzle in my life that was missing. I didn't know what it was. So I was working so hard on my fitness. I was working really hard on other things. I had a full-time job away from sport. I was in menswear, and I've still, from the age of 17, I worked in menswear full-time whilst I was playing for Australia. And the guy that gave me my first job, we're still great mates today and still do work together. But I thought there's a part missing. And until I found music, and I got a guitar, picked up a bass guitar and taught myself the bass and then acoustic, a bit of piano. And that was a little clincher. So when you're in your room by yourself and you're on tour, and it's a 8-week tour of India, and it might be tough cricket, your body's killing, it's hurting, the press might be against you, just lock the door, close the blinds, and just play a couple of tunes. And it might annoy the neighbours, but makes me feel good inside to have a bit of a blowout and just sing a couple of tunes and maybe write like a few songs. But that was my way I could escape
It's amazing. I'm not sure my neighbors feel that way about my 9-year-old playing the trumpet, but
Yeah, tough instrument.
yeah, exactly. All right, let's take a little listen to something.
I know I'm different, I'm not from here, I'm just another guy. With blonde hair though, it's hard to hide, I think I caught your eye.
That's enough. You don't lose all your listeners. Oh,
All right, tell us a little bit about that. That is Brett singing on You're
Yes.
the One for Me. How'd that come about? What happened here? Are you still singing?
2006, we just come back from cricket training, walking in, where was I, Mohali up north. And this gentleman yelled out. So imagine when you're playing with the Australian cricket team in India. As you know, there's people everywhere, 1.5 billion people. So walked in through the hotel foyer, and there's fans there, and they want autographs and stuff because the Australian cricket team are on tour and blah, blah, blah. And this gentleman goes, Brett. And he pulled me over and he goes, we're doing a collaboration with a very famous Indian singer who you would have never heard of. Her name's Asha Bhosle. I said, of course I've heard of her. She's a legend. He's like, really? He's like, okay, we'd love you to be involved. I said, well, because she's like the Aretha Franklin of India. I'm
Yeah.
like, of course I want to be involved. I said, who's she working with and what's the collaboration and what are you trying to achieve? And they said, oh, we're doing stuff with Sanjay Dutt and blah, blah, blah from Bollywood and this guy from Bollywood and Robbie Williams. I went, what, from England? They went, yeah, we're doing like a retake on Angels. I said, well, if Robbie's in, I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do I have to do? They said, come down to the studio tomorrow, just sing your guide vocal and that's it. So I took his details down. I said, look, I'm super keen. We're playing cricket in 2 days' time. I have to sneak, because we were in a bubble back then too. We weren't allowed to go out. I said, look, I'd have to sneak out because I didn't want to tell anyone I was going to go and do a music sort of song or, a film clip or whatever. And I went upstairs, got my guitar, wrote this that cheesy love song in 18 minutes, rang up the gentleman called Shamir Tendon, and I said, I've got the song. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I just wrote a song. Let's hear it. So play the song. He goes, brilliant, done. And I'm like, okay, well, what happens now? And he goes, well, come down. And so I went down, I put the track down, and I said, it'd be really cool if I sang the whole part in English up to the end, and then me have a crack in Hindi at the end. And if Usher sang her whole part in Hindi, and at the end she can have a go in English. He's like, brilliant. So did the song. We had to win that next day, because if we lost the next day, the tour was over, we go straight home. I'm like, we've got to win, because I've got to go, because there was talk about doing a film clip because she was based in Mumbai.
Yeah.
So we won that next day.
Hold on. Did anyone on the team know?
No one
that
had
this
a clue.
No, okay, all right.
So I
yeah,
snuck out. I
Yeah.
snuck out of the team hotel. And if I would have got, fan, I would have been probably kicked off the tour. Wasn't through COVID bubble. It was just like a security bubble.
Yeah.
So we won. We then go to Melbourne. I then sneak out again to go and do a film clip for 2 hours with Asha Bhosle. And that was it. Just did it for fun. 6 weeks later, my manager at the time said, your song's debuted at number 6 in India. And I'm like, this is a G up. And then went to number 1. I was like, no way. So my claim to fame is that I've got a number 1 song in India, cheesy, rubbish, horrendous love song I wrote in 18 minutes. But to go to the ground and play IPL and hear half of the crowd where I was down on the side of the field singing Hame Tumhara Hun, Tumhara Hero Hun, which means, yes, I'm yours, I'll be yours forever. I laugh, I pinch myself, and I just think, how the hell did this happen?
Oh my gosh, when's part 2 coming out? Come on, we need a follow-up.
Well, it's funny because all my mates were sledging me going, that's a rubbish song, it's horrendous. I'm like, yeah, but they love it, And
Well,
how many number 1 hits have you got mucking around?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it did also lead to An Indian, the movie, didn't it? They kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it did. So, look, I think with India, the fact I've tried to learn a bit of the local language, and that's just to be kind and polite, and that's obviously what we're here for today is all about kindness and everything. And for me, if I'm a guest in their country, to learn a bit of the local language, to say thank you, to greet them, and then to do a song, get involved with Bollywood, do a film which was based in Australia but went over to India. The fact that you're actually, you're trying to make an effort in their culture, that's when you get that love back. And I don't do it for any monetary reasons. It's fun. I do it. As I said, it's organised cast when you go over there, and it's just so much fun.
Well, and I don't think, this is a global podcast. And so there are people listening in parts of the world where cricket is not enormous. And I think, I'm a great example where when I was living in the US, I didn't really understand it until I was living in an apartment complex and there were a lot of Indian and Pakistanis living there. And they hung signs all over the apartment complex. There was some big tournament or something on. And at like 3:00 in the morning when it was on in San Francisco time, they were like, it was so loud. They were just going all out. And I was like, what is the deal? Then I moved to Australia and I was like, oh, okay. Then I started traveling to India and Sri Lanka and whatever. And I think like people that aren't familiar with it don't necessarily understand like the gravity of cricket. And every taxi driver I had in India or Sri Lanka was like, oh, you live in Sydney? And then they would just be rambling off, every single cricket star and stat you could imagine. It's like there's a real obsession, really.
And they always know your stats. And as I said, I'm not a massive stats person. And for me, I wasn't playing for those goals. It wasn't how many test wickets I took. It was about how much I could contribute to the team. But if you're in the street in downtown Mumbai, I guarantee you someone's going to know your stats better than you. So it's very, very impressive.
But I think there's also, I'd say, especially the Australian cricket team, there's a lot of cricketers that have done some amazing charity work through those parts of the world as well, yourself included. Tell us a bit about music and some of the philanthropy that you've been involved with.
Well, look, I think it's very important that if you keep going to a country and taking so much out of it, I'm talking like experiences, great memories, great moments, you have to put back in. The obvious choice was a cricket academy, something to do with cricket. And I thought, yeah, look, cricket's fun, it's enjoyable, but music's my passion. I just happen to be better at cricket. So I thought, well, why not do something around the lines of music therapy? Because I know how much it's helped me through my life. When we said just a couple of minutes ago about, learning the acoustic guitar and getting you out of those little ruts or times when you're down or you're happy, whatever music can do. So I started music, MEWSIC. It was for sick kids, so I play on words with the title. There was a lot of kids who were struggling. They're on the farms and, just not the knowledge of the pesticides that they were using on the farms, and kids unfortunately getting cancer at a young age, and they'd bring them down to Mumbai and they're given the cancer treatment that they need, which is all well and good. But what happens when the parent comes down from the country, from the farm, to stay with their kids for treatment for 6 months? There's no dole. There's nothing that they can just get. Like the parents, unfortunately, their work suffers. They'll probably lose their job. They're not getting paid. They can't afford to stay anywhere. So what happens to the parents? So long story short, I thought I'll raise some money and to help out and tee up and do a JV with like St. Jude's Hospital and raise some money to look after the parents to stay there with their children. And we'll get some music therapists. So we've got a lot of people from Australia. They've donated their time. They've gone over to India and teach the kids how to play drums and guitar and bass and just belt instruments for an hour a day. Take their mind off, the hard sort of slog they're going through with their treatment.
And you're going to keep working on that? That'll keep going?
Yeah, look, it's obviously with COVID took a big hit with a lot of opportunities, I think, over in India and businesses and stuff, and music was the same. So it's had a bit of a lull for 2 years, but definitely going to crank it back up because it's just, I took my wife over there and went and saw these kids and played a couple of songs for them, and just to see when you get the guitar out and you play one chord and that beautiful big smile on their face pops up. And for that 3 minutes of a song or the hour that you're there playing music for them, they're not worried, as I mentioned, about the treatment they're going through. So I actually probably get more of it than the kids because I love doing it. So yeah, definitely going to crank that back up and looking forward to getting back over to Mumbai to do it.
There's a lot more of Brett coming. In part 2, we hear questions from next-door neighbors and how a traumatic experience brought Brett and one of his best friends, Wiggle Greg Page, together on a neighborhood initiative. And don't forget, if you want to connect with your neighbors, download the Nextdoor app or go to nextdoor.com.